So Josh, y'all, let's go ahead and get started, man. So where are you at in the world?
So I'm in Southern Maryland, about an hour and 15 minutes outside of DC, pretty much as far south as you can go in Maryland.
Cool, awesome. And how long have you been with eXp?
I've been with eXp just over 2 years. Before that, I was with Century 21 for about 14 years, and then I started my career back in 2000 rather at Long and Foster Realtors, which is a large regional brokerage here.
Okay, wow. So you've been in real estate 23 years.
Yeah, 23
Cool.
years.
Wow, congrats.
Thanks.
And that's with just 3 companies.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I was on a three-way call, I think last week with someone that's been in real estate like 3 years, and they're with like 6 different companies.
Yeah, I see that sometimes too. It makes you scratch your head and wonder,
Yeah,
it's probably not the brokerage, it's probably the agent.
Yeah. Hopefully they join eXp and it's their last, because
Right,
keep
right.
around forever like that, man, you're not going to get good traction.
Right.
So cool. Let's talk a little bit about why you joined eXp about 2 years ago. So you're at Century 21. You saw what we were doing. What really spoke to you and appealed to you the most?
Yeah, so my last position at Century 21, I was a full-time branch manager, and so I managed the number 1 Century 21 office with the number 1 Century 21 company. We were number 1 for many years, and then that grew into me taking on a second branch, and then a third smaller branch, and so definitely doing well. We had been at that time the number 1 broker in Southern Maryland, which is about 3 counties. We have about 1,400 or 1,500 licensed agents as part of the association, so not real big, but we were doing well. But I plan to be, God willing, in the business for at least another 20 years. I enjoy it. I want to be part of it. I don't want to retire quickly and all that. But I was just looking at, okay, well, so Century 21, great company, certainly in their time was a disruptor through the franchise models and all that. But certainly not that anymore. I don't think most people would say that. And so certainly very traditional. And as a manager, the problems that I dealt with, the frustrations from the agents and all, a lot of it revolved around the fees with the company and how much the franchise fee was and the nickel and dime fees and all that kind of stuff. And we did a lot of things well, but I just felt like there had to be a better approach. And in my heart, I'm an agent and always have been an agent. Even when I was managing, I felt still like an agent in a management role. And of course, it thought, like a lot of people, when you have success, you think, well, maybe I can open my own brokerage and do this better and do it my way. And so I was certainly open to that, considered Keller Williams, and had pretty advanced conversations with them because I felt like they were a good alternative. And then I saw that Lars Hedenborg had switched over to eXp. And there were 1 or 2 people in my marketplace that had switched over and, kind of felt like, yeah, that's just sort of a one-off kind of thing. And those avatar things and, all that stuff.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense to me. That'll never last. You got to have bricks and mortar, right? And then Lars said, I'm like, okay, he's like literally one of the smartest people that I know in the industry. I got to find out like why he did it. And so through conversations with him, I got super excited about it, obviously, and could see the benefits based on my background. And so I named Lars as my sponsor and made the leap. And it was a big shock to the community down here, the agent community at least, and the people that I had left over there and all that. But I just knew that I could build a much better business and a platform and serve agents at a much higher level by having the flexibility that eXp, offered. So I decided, even though obviously eXp is mostly virtual, we're in a more rural area. And so I knew that it'd be a shock to a lot of the agents to say we're going 100% virtual, right? And we don't have any Regus spaces anywhere close to us. Plenty in Maryland, plenty in Northern Virginia, DC, but none near us. And so I made the personal decision to open up a small branch. And so we opened up a branch and kind of use it as our base. We allow our agents to meet with clients, and we have trainings and things like that. And so that's what we decided to do. And then, we kind of just have grown from there. But that's the basics of how I got over.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for sharing that. I want to unpack the idea of a branch a little bit more because I get that question a lot. I get it from usually lower producers that I'm having calls with about joining eXp. They're very concerned about having an office because they don't really know how to sell real estate yet. So I can see the value of being able to actually go in the office, sit in front of somebody to boost your confidence to actually become a successful agent. So I do see that appeal to newer agents and low producers of having an office. So I get that question a lot. And I also get the question a lot from agents that may be like you are in more rural type markets. So I love that you brought that up. And a lot of people are probably considering it or have considered it, or they're going to get that question too. So I would like to just talk about how you did it. Like how much space do you have? How many agents do you have that have access to it? How many actually come in? Just kind of talk through that a little bit.
Right. So I've learned a lot of lessons about people, about the business, about myself and all that. But the space, just to give the basics of it, we have about 1,000 square feet. It's literally, and I didn't plan this, but it's a small area and it is what it is, literally right next door to the Century 21 building that I manage. So I see people wave to people through the window.
Nice.
Right. Super convenient. It's actually a minute or so, or 30 seconds closer to my house. So it's sort of, but yeah, so basically we just have five offices and a large conference room that I'm sitting in here, and people can reserve the conference room through an app. And we have agents who rent offices. But one of the lessons I learned was everybody wants the space, but doesn't want to pay for it. Right. And somebody has to pay for it. Right. And I certainly took a leap of faith that, I know I'm going to be able to bring people over and the rev share will offset and all that kind of stuff. But the reality of it is, even when I was at Century 21 and they have a 3-story bricks and mortar building, and it's a freaking ghost town, you know what I mean? And they have 75 to 100 agents, and you see 5 or 6 cars in the parking lot, unless it's meeting day, and you might see 15, you know what I mean? But all brokers realize that the agents, for the most part, are not coming in and using the space, and they're paying for it, right? So we have a smaller space, so it's more manageable and all that. And at this point, through the people that we have renting and through some other income sources, where it's covered, right? So it's good, and it's a good thing to have. We're expanding up into Annapolis, which is about an hour and a half or so away. There's 2 Regus office spaces there. There's no plans at all to open up an office space because it's not necessary, right? So we just don't have a lot of shared workspaces down here. One's just opening up not too far from us, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But so I used it obviously as a selling point, but I'm sure that I still could have brought people on without it, but I chose to do that. And there are people, you'll talk to people that say, oh yeah, I work better away from home, I get distracted. And there's certainly some truth to that. But even those people don't come in that often because they're out working.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's the mentality, it's like the safety net or whatever, but it is not the end all be all. And it's an expense that you got to make sure is covered. So the mechanics of doing it in Maryland are pretty easy. You pay a $5 fee and you get your broker approval, and you can open up your own branch, and there's no franchise fees or anything like that. So for us, it was very easy to do. I'm responsible for everybody in the branch through Maryland. I'm the office manager, so that's a little added responsibility there. But beyond that, it's been good. I don't know if AJ's frozen or I'm frozen or what. It's AJ.
No, that's cool, man. Like, we get the objection all the time, like, hey, eXp won't work for me because, we don't want to be virtual, or we don't believe in the virtual concept. To which I say, that's cool, man. Like, you don't have to do it virtually. We're just not forcing you to do it brick and mortar. So if you have an office, like, by all means, have one. We just had a team come over in Northern California in Redding, and their thing was like, they knew they could have an office if they wanted it, but their thing was, dude, we can't have a San Francisco address for our listings in MLS. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, we'll get you a branch office approval, and then that'll be your address. And they were like, really? So it's like, any of the objections that people have because they're doing it one way and they think EXP is like this mandatory virtual other way.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
So
Right.
explain that process. Like you went through the branch application, your address is your office now. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as, like I said, the broker in Maryland reviews the lease to make sure that eXp is not responsible in any way for the payment of the rent and all that kind of stuff. And so, either through an entity or partners or whatever, or individually, you sign the lease with the landlord, and then you apply through Maryland. And every state's a little bit different, but through Maryland, you just fill out a simple form, get the broker to sign off on it, literally pay $5, and then you're good to go. And then, from
there's some insurance requirements there too, right?
Yeah. Sure.
They'll tell you what that is.
Yeah, but it really is anything. And again, like if I were to like stay in the Century 21 system and I wanted to open up my own franchise or whatever, you're literally talking hundreds of thousands of dollars and then ongoing franchise fees and all that kind of stuff. And so anybody, whether it's a team, and I think, I think in Maryland it's more teams that are opening up their own branch because they just want to be independent, have their own branding, have their own, vibe and all that kind of stuff. I started off a little bit more of like a brokerage within a brokerage because that's kind of where I came from, being a manager and all that kind of stuff. And it certainly morphed a little bit, but we have flexibility, we have convenience, and it works for us. But if I were closer to more metropolitan area, I probably would not have. I might rent an office space in a Regis or a WeWork or something like that, but I don't, it's not necessary in my opinion.
Yeah. I even think like the time is changing, right? So people are quickly becoming more and more open to not having a physical office. Yeah. Even in the last couple of years, I've seen, massive, adoption of that. And I can even hear in your voice, like, you're like, I probably didn't need to do this.
Yeah.
But the lesson here for us watching is don't try to take everything away from people that they think they want. If they think that's important to them and they need it, let them do it.
Right.
And then let them learn as they go, and they can evolve, and they can maybe not have it, or they can kind of pivot, but like, don't try to convince people what they want or don't want.
Right.
That creates a lot of friction in the move over to eXp. Just let them understand how they can do what they want here.
Right. Exactly. And I just have to say too, like I tell people all the time, okay, bricks and mortar, I was the only manager in that branch sitting there, and agents would be lined up outside my door with problems and questions and all that kind of stuff. If I'm in on a Zoom or I'm meeting with somebody else, they're just going to have to wait. It is so easy and so quick. We have 4 brokers in Maryland, and each state obviously has a different number based on the number of agents. But like, it's so easy to go in there and have a conversation with somebody. And yes, it's the avatar and all that kind of stuff. But like, it's so easy. When I show people that, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's ridiculous." Like they come to me like, "Hey, I've been emailing and I haven't gotten a response back." And I'm like, "Did you go in the world?" "Well, no, not yet." I'm like, "Okay, let's go into the world." And like within 2 or 3 minutes, we got, "Oh, hey, Josh, how you doing?" It's just like walking in, but there's always somebody there versus like having to wait for the manager to get out of a meeting, so
Totally.
The accessibility is way better, with that virtual setup, so, but that's the beauty of eXp is it can be really whatever you want it to be. And you just can't do that with any other brand.
Last night I had a situation that we needed to get some stuff from eXp, some circumstantial exceptions agreements back. It was kind of timely because we had people that were trying to sign up before the other person had even like finished signing up. And I reached out to Sean Murphy, who's the president of growth for the West, United States. And he wasn't available because he was bringing on a team of 300 when I was trying to call him. It was after 5 o'clock on the East Coast, but within minutes, I was still able to get in communication with Dave Kennord, get everything handled, get everything like where it needed to be, at least for that day until today. And we just rock and roll. I mean, it's such an amazing environment that we have, and people in different time zones and parts of the country, and yet we're all working together for the same common cause. A couple of questions that came up while you were talking, Josh, is
Sure.
Is there a limited number of branch offices that are allowed? You're going to want to check with your state on that. Each state's going to have, kind of a different policy or philosophy on
Yeah,
that?
I'll just chime in on that. So we literally have another branch office that's like a mile away from us, right? And they're not part of our Game Changers group and all that kind of stuff, but they're able to open that up. So at least in Maryland, there's really no restrictions as far as that goes, as long as you check all the other boxes. I think in Maryland, we have, last time I checked, we have like 30 or 35 branch offices. I don't know how that compares to other states, but that's what I was told.
Nice.
Yeah.
Darren asks, what if you work at home? Can you still get a branch office that way? My understanding is no, you can't
right.
call your home office a branch office. It has to be like a legit commercial space.
Right.
And then there's some requirements around that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeff
But
Lewis said,
but one of the other questions too was how many agents are out of the branch. So we have approaching 40 agents out of the branch. And then I have like another 30 or so agents that are scattered throughout Southern Maryland here. One group, a team has probably about 35 minutes north of here, has their own branch also in their county. So that's kind of how we're set up.
awesome. Hey man, I appreciate you sharing about this branch office. But we got a few minutes left, and I'd really like to maybe see if we can pivot this conversation.
Sure.
I think it's cool what we shared today, but I don't think it's the most powerful thing about you. I recently learned a little bit more about your story in talking to Lars just a couple of weeks ago, actually, and sort of the leap of faith that you had to take coming from what you came from into this opportunity, and also what that leap of faith required from you in the short term to make it work. I don't want to share too much, but whatever you're comfortable sharing around that, I think that's very powerful for these people on this call.
Sure, absolutely. Well, look, going from in this area again, like certain areas of the country, North Carolina, things like that, eXp has been known for years and accepted, and it's been proven and all that kind of stuff. And it just wasn't where I was. And like I said, there were a couple of eXp people, but nobody even knew what it was, And so for the first 2 years, we've definitely, I'd say for the first year, we had to explain it, it's a whole eXp, thing, whatever. We had to explain that. We had to say we're virtual, but we do have an office space. Well, that doesn't make sense. Well, if you're totally virtual, yeah, that sounds stupid, whatever. We had to do all that. And then we had to obviously have, questions with, more traditional, generally older, I'll say, clients of like, oh, I've never heard of you all before, even though we're in all 50 states and, we're huge and all that kind of stuff. And so dealt with that. But, I also too, like a lot of employees of brokerages, I had a non-compete, well, non-solicit really. And I, even though I have a ton of relationships with people over at Century 21, I needed to honor that agreement and agree to it. So I did honor it. And certainly people would reach out to me, and I wasn't soliciting them, and we could have those conversations, or they came, through other people in our group and all that. But yeah, my hands were tied for sure, but even through all that, we still brought on a lot of people, and not just from Century 21, but a lot of people from other brokerages too. But so that's a challenge for sure. You have to watch what you say, watch what you do, and more than anything, though, honestly, it's the early adopter kind of thing. Like it takes some guts. Maybe a little stupidity, maybe a little recklessness to be like, yeah, you know what? Like, I know the business, I know the models, and this is a freaking rock star model. Like, I'm doing it, right? And it's scary. And and the thing is too, like, I was making multiple, 6 figures, comfortable, right? Yeah. But who wants to live a life of like just comfort? Like, I could not envision going another 20 years in that position and never growing anymore, right? And so I absolutely took a step back in income and all that, and we're getting to the point now where it's all starting to pay off, and it's coming in, and there's multiple streams and things like that. But yeah, it's been hard for sure, but what I'm seeing now is that we've created a culture and a community, and we've kind of found our niche in a few different areas and all that, and now it's really starting to work. But, and look, I've been hot and cold in, you know, making the calls and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of the cool thing though, is that you can do it, step away for a little bit and then come back to it. I know that the results aren't going to be consistent that way, but, you know, that's the beauty.
It is amazing though, because you really can't do that in your sales career.
No,
Like
no.
if you do sales and then you take a month off and then you try to come back, like you're starting over at zero again.
Right.
You got to push that boulder up the hill. So that is a cool thing. No, man, I think your story is great. I think that, you know, I have a lot of respect for the guys like you that, you know, that you give up a lot when you come over, right? Like, you know, multiple six figures to, hey, now I'm just an agent starting from scratch and build this thing. So I commend you for that. And I think it's an awesome story. And I think you guys are going to be doing big things in Maryland. Yeah, it's the early adopters that get the, you know, massive growth in those. There's only so many markets left in the country like that.
Right.
So yeah, it's super cool. Does anybody have a question for Josh before we wrap up? Awesome, man. I think you crushed it. You did a great job of breaking that down. If any of you guys are talking to somebody that is in a market that doesn't have a lot of eXp yet, or they have an office and they're concerned about coming over to eXp and what that looks like, be sure and get a copy of this recording. It'll be in Game Changers, and make sure that they watch it, because I think it was very powerful and will serve a lot of your prospects.
Yeah, and I'm willing to, if anybody thinks that my story, my background can help you in any way, please just reach out and I'll give you my thoughts and, you know, everything that I've experienced and all that kind of stuff. So
awesome.
Yep.
AJ's back. Any last words, brother?
Man, I just want to ask you, where do you see yourself in 3 years with RevShare? You mentioned that you're around 70 total agents in your organization. Like, what would be that 3-year goal of total organization size?
The goal that I'm going for is 500 agents total.
Love it.
That, you know, I'm looking at 5%. The goal is 5% increase in total organization size monthly. We'll see how that goes, and that's net, obviously, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how it's modeling out right now. So
cool, awesome. Well, that should get you there in about 3 years. Then it sounds like.
Yeah.
Cool, awesome. Thanks, Josh. This was really great.
You guys, appreciate it.
See ya.
All right, see ya.